Questionable Ethics, Chapter 4, Rare Specimen. Son of a bitch, they surrounded me. How? How was it possible that these creatures were able to move so fast and quietly too? Was I really that zoned out while scouting the village? I mean, there had to have been at least a 100 of these things all around me. They peeked out of the bushes, sat upon tree branches, and even stood out in the open, their vibrant colors mocking me with their lack of camouflage. The amount of noise they should have made while getting here would have definitely gotten my attention, yet not a sound was heard. What made things worse was that they were blocking my only means of escape. The path I took to get here was now partially walled off by those four-legged beasts. A retreat was not in my favor. Even if I shot a grenade from my M203 into the crowd to clear a path, the amount of rotations it would achieve before hitting one of them would not be enough for the payload to activate. Even still, I would be caught in the explosion, if the timer wasn't an issue, regardless of that. These creatures had the numeral upper hand. If I charged that line, instead of trying to body my way through it, I could be taken down in an instant. Shooting my way out would only work for 30 rounds before my mag would run dry, and they would get the drop on me before I could slap home a new one. Therefore, my options were slim to none. I couldn't really do anything except stand here and wait for them to make the first move. Maybe if I saw how they'd attack me, I would be able to weasel my way out. So far, the time being, I found myself standing there dumbfounded on what to do next. But besides the fact that I could be, quite frankly, totally fucked at this juncture, I couldn't wrap my brain around the absurdity of this situation. Was I not paying close enough attention to my surroundings? Was I tuned out of reality for the time I spent scouting? Or even worse, did these bright-as-day hooved horses-looking motherfuckers really outmaneuver me so easily? How insulting would that be if that were true? And oh, how quickly would I be to defend myself if it were? My eyes darted from left to right as I kept on weighing my options in my head. Each solution I got, my window of survivability got smaller and smaller. I began to grow anxious as my stressed brain kept crunching numbers away, whilst I became restless in this encirclement. I looked into the eyes of those creatures as they stared up at me, their faces blank without expressions. They looked confused or lost, as if they weren't sure what to do, or they weren't sure what they were looking at. Which was probably the case, as I might have been the first human they had ever come into contact with. Despite my worrying, they didn't seem to be hostile for the most part. Over the sound of my beating heart, now in my ears at this point, due to the tensity of the situation, came a nagging call to action. It was a shouting teeth on flesh kind of carnal blood lust that was slowly coaxing my finger towards the trigger. The shouting became self-evident and loud enough to the point that I could hear it inside me, like the beating of war drums. Like the beating of my heart, my subconscious was coming back out. My warrior spirit was taking over again. Kill, 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 kill. I looked down to see my thumb flicking the safety switch on my rifle to fully automatic. It was only then did I wrestle my calm thinking self on top of my mirror's eagerness for bloodshed. Stop, I shouted from within my mind, loud enough to break through the haze of the hungry and frenzied subconscious. I quickly flicked my vision away from my rifle as I looked at the reflection of my eyes in the back of my mask's lenses. There I saw my eyes stare back into me. I saw myself for what I was. I gathered the courage to reply, letting my words strike at this corrupted mirror of myself. These creatures I have deemed to be non-hostile to me. There is no reason for me to escalate this situation any further than it already has. I am not going to stand down and place my weapon back onto condition 1. End of story, I spoke softly into my mirror. You do not get to make that decision, Adrian. I do. And in doing so, I have seen fit to suspect that these creatures do, in fact, harbor hostile intent. After all, if they weren't hostile towards us, then why would they block our only means of escape. Why would they surround us like this? Better yet, why would they outnumber us 100 to 1? It's clear as day they mean us harm. My mirror thought back to myself. Look at them. They're just curious as to why we're here. If they were hostile, why would they have already attacked? They would have already attacked me by now. I whispered icily in return. You're judging those creatures based on their looks. Come on, Adrian. You've been in it enough combat zones to know that looks can be deceiving. My mirror shot back. Yeah, maybe that's true, but this isn't Kiwat or Somalia, and it sure as hell ain't Black Mesa. That stigma doesn't apply here. Plus, I have an ROE to follow. They haven't provoked me yet, so I will refuse to attack them. You should know this, I said back justly. Oh, come on. Do you honestly think those creatures give two shits about your rules of engagement? We are so far beyond the AO that the ROE doesn't apply. This is about survival, my mirror yelled back at me. As far as I'm concerned, the ROE always applies, no matter where we are, and on top of that, I believe their actions are justified in response of what we're doing, I retorted quickly. How is this justified? What have we done to deserve this? I definitely screamed at myself. Are you being serious? We showed up unannounced to their village, possibly trespassing on their sovereignty. We then proceeded to duck into a nearby bush, pull out a pair of binoculars, and spy on them. And finally, on top of all that, we are harboring on our personal military-grade weapons and armor they've probably never seen before. As far as they are concerned, we are a legitimate threat. Not the other way around, I inwardly replied matter-of-factly to myself. You are going to get us both killed, you hear me? The moment you stop listening to your gut is the moment you lose your ability to think clearly in combat. Without me, you're nothing, Marine. Nothing. You can't just reject your creed. You can't just leave behind what you are. I'm not a monster. I'm not a killer. I'm a Marine. And I know the difference between right and wrong, I growled back as I tightened the grip on my rifle. Your battle buddies sure don't seem to know right from wrong when they were lining up scientists to be shot whilst abusing them for information. The mirror hissed in return. Those words were stabbing at me in my soul. I reared back and grabbed my mirror inside of my mind, putting my subconscious mirrored self into a chokehold. You shut your fucking whore mouth, you piece of shit. We were lied to and you know it. I roared at myself. I laughed while I choked myself, with my mind trying to shut it up. That's it. That's the anger of a devil dog. Now go. Use that anger. Kill those aliens. The mirror wailed back, trying to egg me on as I choked it, but I was better than that, and I was in control this time. Whatever this voice was, just lost sovereignty over my mind. With that comment, I would have not have my Marines been slandered like this, even if what he said was true. We were lied to by those we trusted in command of our unit. They forced us to commit humanitarian atrocities against our own people. I will never go over that, or forgive that. What I can, however, get over is this voice, this bloodlusting demon in my mind, needed to leave, or at least it needed to be shoved deep down, back into my subconscious before it manifested again. No, I refuse your reality. With that, I did as I thought I would. I pushed the voice deep down into a black hole, a metaphorical hole inside my mind, and I covered it up with as much thoughts as I could to keep it from coming out again. I buried that voice as fast and as best as I could. I buried it alive as I piled on the good memories and happiness I found throughout my life. I patted it down hard and tight as best as I could, and yet, despite this, I was able to get one more thing out before it was silenced, as I kept on shoveling the good vibes. No matter how deep you shove me down, I'll always be here, and I'll always make your life a living hell if you don't start seeing sense. I'll hurt you where you can't hurt me, Marine. You're finished. I said before I finally went silent. Silence. The wind blew a distant breeze as the voice faded away, and I stood there, my eyes closed as I let my rifle down from my shoulder. My eyes opened up and looked upon the weapon. It made me sick to think that I could have given to the voice. Ultimately, I didn't, and that's all that mattered. A small victory had been won, and I was one to rake in the spoils, the non-existent kind. I took in and held on to a deep breath for a moment. As I paused to recollect myself, instinctively I found my thumb to flick the fire selector, switch back to safety. I quickly hoisted the weapon over my shoulder, its frame sliding back into position next to my rucksack, and there it would stay, hopefully for a while. I craned my head down to look at the encircling horses. They all looked to be consumed by confusion and apprehensiveness, their bodies leaning back away from me with uncertainty. The horses were scared, that much was obvious, so I needed to do something non-threatening in order to fix what I had done. Whatever that something was needed to be done quickly, so I did the only thing I thought was appropriate. Without a word being spoken to the creatures, I took a knee and slowly brought myself down to the ground so that my height above them wasn't a massive factor. Here I sat, Indian style, on the ground, and placed my hands on my knees, in a very non-threatening manner, of course. I didn't take off my mask. That was going to stay on as long as I could keep it on. It housed my head-up display, another tactical data I needed to see. It was simply too important to take off, especially now. The mood surrounding me turned around almost instantaneously. The horse creatures looked amongst themselves, their eyes showing clear signs of even greater confusion. Some shook their heads and others shrugged their shoulders. It was a very strange to witness. Such intelligence and human-like mannerisms wasn't something I was expecting from these horses. Maybe they were a lot smarter than I thought. "Excuse me, please, every pony, make way." The sudden sound of talking cut through the air like a butcher's knife as the sound of mumbling would rise from the crowd. The moment the voice spoke out, the first thing I thought was it was English. Whoever just showed up spoke my language, finally someone I could speak to. My hopes immediately shot through the roof was it someone I knew? Could they have been someone from Black Mesa? Those thoughts alone got my attention, and because of this, my head instantly did a 180 towards the location of the voice. What I saw confused me greatly. I spun my head around, expecting to see someone I could recognize as human, or only for me to see two more of those creatures slowly walking over to me while they waded through the crowd. There was nobody here. I only saw more quadrupeds. Confused, I spun my body around to get a better look, whilst looking to see beyond the two that were approaching me, assuming the person that spoke was hidden behind them. That was until the voice came back. It came from the smaller one of the two new arrivals. The horses were speaking English. "Please, we need to get through. Could you all, just take a few hoof steps to the left or right? That would be really appreciated." The voice came from a smaller one of the two new horses that had walked on the scene. It was the orange-maned, cream-coated one, with a pair of dark golden eyes. I was pretty sure that this one was more than likely a female. I was 95% sure of that, considering its voice was high-pitched and it held a very feminine eyelashes beneath its eyelids. However, the one that walked beside her looked way different than all the other creatures in the crowd. This one was much taller in comparison. Hell, it might have just been as tall as me. It boasted long legs. It walked with a proud trot as it approached me confidently, with its chest puffed out much further than the others. This one was obviously a part of the elite of their kind, if not straight up their leader. Bestowed upon its head was a golden crown just in front of its horn, which too seemed taller than all the others. This one also looked female, but it didn't speak yet. Instead, it looked very reserved and kept its eyes on me the whole time, almost creepily. Their coat tone was a dirty, light yellowish white color, while their mane was a dual tone of both a light and dark teal. It also held eyeliner on its eyelids that matched their mane with their eyes, that were a flurry red. That as the horse-like creatures continued to watch me, they burned a hole into the center of my forehead, as if they were trying to mind-fuck me. I didn't like that look. It was filled with a dominating presence. As the two quadrupeds made their way further into the crowd, the horses began to bow their heads to the taller one as she passed them. This confirmed it. She must have been their leader. Either that, or she was a noble of some sort, and they needed to pay respects to. As to not be that much of an arrogant asshole, I stood up slowly and kept my attention on them as they approached me. I did not bow to her like they did. The only person this American bows to is God. Stretching myself out back to my normal height, and the realization that I was still, in fact, the tallest one here, became apparent. My height quickly rose above the tall noble's head by a good 3 inches, which focused a look of surprised fear onto the one who walked beside her. Despite the disparity in the show of what I could only sense was resilience to me, she kept staring me down, not fazed, affected by my size at all. I had to give her credit where credit was due. She was doing all the right things to impress me and represent her people. Her assistant, however, took a moment to gather herself. Please make way for Rainshine. Thank you. The cream-colored one spoke out again, as they finally made their way into the clearing within the circle. They now stood roughly a foot away from me. I looked down to the smaller one, and then she looked up at me. While she had looked scared before, her emotion now had changed to that of being stressed. She would start to speak again, but this time her voice was choppy, even more broken up, as if she was trying to remember certain things to say in a certain manner, like a kid at a spelling bee. Hello, my name is Autumn Blaze. I'm honored to welcome you to Perilous Peaks. We hope that your journey here was an easy one. As the Kieran foreign ambassador and representative of the Kieran race to newcomers, I hope that you have come in peace and goodwill. While she spoke to me, she would at times glance up at the taller one and clear her throat. It was obvious that this was more than likely the first time she had to do this. Maybe she was a new hire and was nervous on her first day. However, despite the hiccups along the way, she got her greeting out rather well. Soon after she was done speaking, she turned and spoke to the one that I assumed was called Rainshine. She spoke in a loud whisper as her nervousness came rushing out of her like a dam that had been broken. Did I do good, Rainshine? I think I did good. I read everything out on the card that I needed to be read. I spoke with passion. I looked into the eyes and I barely had any hiccups. Her muffled rant would trail off into incomprehensible whispers. As visible beads of sweat rolled off her forehead, it would quickly stop as her leader reached down and placed a hoof onto her snout while quieting her with a hush. She then looked down to Autumn and smiled, giving her a slow, affirming nod. A loud, almost comical sigh of relief exhaled from her lungs as she wiped her hoof across her brow. After Rainshine's hoof was removed from her snout, it looked as if she could have passed right out then and there. But she held herself together, even though I knew her nerves were eating her up inside. Finally, after tending to her for a moment, quieting her fears, though through a hushed whispers, the tall one known as Rainshine turned back to me. She began her own welcoming speech, and it started with her bowing her head to me slowly. Greetings, onward traveler. My name is Rainshine, leader of the Kirans. Her head would slowly come back up as her eyes reaffixated themselves to mine. You must excuse our behavior. She gestured with a hoof to her staring subjects all around us. We were not expecting any visitors this week. No letter had been delivered to us informing me of any pony coming. So this borderline hostile reaction from us was just a precaution. You must understand our concern. We don't get many visitors around here, she announced eloquently, while slowly trotting clockwise around me, before stopping, getting a better look at me, whilst also sizing me up to see if I was really a threat or a threat they could handle. Our friends here alerted us of a great disturbance that was headed our way. One to them that felt hostile. When she said the word friends, the white and black rabbits from earlier would hop up to her forehooves as they appeared from the crowd behind her, their ears perking up as they looked up at me. They were acting like scouts this whole time. I had a feeling that's what they were, but something told me the rabbits didn't have cognitive capabilities to perform such a task. Clearly I was wrong. Normally they would have assumed or reacted this way if there were some pony that were familiar with, but you being the way you are, put them off. I'm not exactly sure what they saw in you to garner their hostile assumptions, but I would like to hope what may have been was just a misconception or a misunderstanding. Then again, they'd never been wrong before. She spoke icily, as she took a very sturdy step forward, showing me that she was in charge here, and that I was as a newcomer, and would need to earn trust before she stood down. Needless to say, I was still very impressed. Now, with that in mind, who are you? What are you? And why have you come here? She said with a stern, narrow look in her eyes. A stern that I would echo back with one of my own, holding my ground much as she was. I would not be intimidated so easily. Your Majesty, if I may call you that, my name is Adrian Shepard, and I'm a human being, a male human, if we're being specific. I'm also a Marine, a corporal to be exact, in the United States Marine Corps Special Forces Group. I'm part of the 1st HEC Battalion, formerly recognized as the HECU, or the Hazardous Environment Combat Unit, based out of Fort Santiago, Arizona. I took a moment to pause to let all of that sink in for a moment. I slowly looked around at the encirclement of horses known as Kirin. Their eyes kept themselves glued to me, now more than ever before, as I'm fairly certain that they too didn't expect me to speak their language. And to answer your final question with the utmost honesty, I have come here with no purpose. I have been dumped here due to some cosmic malplacement, or because of my own irrelation, without anywhere to go, and in a place that I was no way familiar with. I sought shelter and happened to come across your kingdom by sheer coincidence. I apologize for arriving with a hostile demeanor, for my intentions were not to cause confusion or mass panic. But you must understand that I am in an unknown territory and I must defend myself at all costs, no matter what. I finished my explanation and returned my attention back to Rainshine, whose face by now had changed. She was no longer as stern and aggressive towards me like before. Instead, she was surprised, but despite her change in tone, still she was protective of her people. As the silence returned and the knowledge I dispensed had settled in, Rainshine spoke again. I am unfamiliar with some of your terminologies you use to describe yourself, and I am not knowledgeable on the place you come from, but am I correct to assume that you are a soldier?" she asked, looking down at my uniform and glancing at my weapon I held in my hands. I nodded once. "Yes, I'm a Marine, a different type of soldier, but still a soldier." "How did you know?" I asked as my head cocked gently to the side at her correct assumption. It was obvious that I was a soldier, but I wanted to understand her thought process for jumping to this conclusion. "You mentioned in your description that you were based out of, meaning that you came from a base, in this case a fort. Fort Santiago. Santiago." Her pronunciation of the base was funny to me, as she circled her hoof around, sounding out the word. "Yes, Fort Santiago, Arizona. The complex specializes in training normal Marines to become HECU Marines," I would quickly explain. She would nod, placing a hoof to her chin as she pondered on the spot. Right. Well, we've never had anything like you here before, especially some pony with your kind of background. Because of that, I must ask you, do you intend on causing harm to me or my Kieran?" she demanded coldly, her eyes squinting at me with malice. I knew I had stated already that I meant no harm, but I could understand her cautious nature towards me. "No, your Majesty. We Marines are taught and trained well. We don't hurt those who don't hurt us first. It is in our rules of engagement, that is. Of course, unless we have orders that say otherwise. Right now, though, I'm all alone, and not in contact with my command element or my unit. So I have no orders, and you have my honest word that no harm shall come to your subjects whatsoever. I swear to God," I quickly exclaimed, while swearing to the Lord. With this pledge firmly planted in her mind, Rainshine would nod and smile at me. "Then I shall hold you to that," she quietly accepted before turning around. She raised her voice to the crowd. "Attention, please. My words. This human is not here to hurt us. I can see that now, that a hostile response to his arrival was uncalled for. You may return to your daily activities so that I and our visitor may speak privately about the duration of his stay." With that, all the Kieran around us bowed to her and stood there before they slowly trickled back into the town. The sound of clopping hooves overpowered all other noise around me. I watched them as they left, keeping an eye on them, making sure they weren't trying to ambush me now. Some would spark up conversations with each other as they passed me. They were all low murmurs so that I couldn't hear them, but I could tell I was being judged. It was obvious that there was still fear or mistrust in their hearts for me as they left while they spoke. It was understandable to be expected. After some time, the area was left empty, except for me, Rainshine, and Autumn Blaze, who stayed behind under Rainshine's orders. The area was quiet again, and a sigh of relief departed my lips, from which was muffled through my mask. The two remaining Kieran spoke once more, turning to me. "I am truly deeply sorry about our response to your arrival. I do hope that your opinion of us isn't too ruined already." Rainshine spoke, as she gazed out to her village, watching the Kieran. I looked down at her with a brow raised. "What? Oh, no. I understand completely as why you did the things that you did. Hell, I think they were the right thing to do given the situation. If I were in your shoes, I would have done the same thing," I replied. Reassuringly, she nodded and slowly turned away from overlooking her people while she said something. "The glass cup cannot boil water for long." "Excuse me?" I asked, confused by the vagueness of the statement. She looked up to me and was about to speak and explain herself, but her words were cut away by Autumn. "It means paranoia will grow and boil over time if not kept in check," she said, smiling brightly while assuming she understood the metaphor, and judgingly by the almost exhausted smile from Rainshine and got it right. Yes, that is correct. Thank you, Autumn," she said in a motherly tone. "But what I meant by it exactly is, I sense my Kirin are still very scared of you." I would slowly nod to this. It was obvious that they were still scared of me. It didn't take a genius to see that. No amount of reassurance from me alone can salate their fears. I'm sorry that they don't trust you, Corporal Shepard. You are quite the imposing force, and something that they've never seen before. Hearing her call me that was strange and a bit unsettling. "Your Majesty, you don't need to call me Corporal. Adrian is fine," I replied, trying to break down the barrier between us a bit more and try and ease the tension. "And you don't need to call me Your Majesty. Rain is fine," she immediately fired back, almost as if I had insulted her. I was a bit taken aback by this. Was she not the ruler of the Kirin, or was I getting the wrong impression on who she was? Rainshine took a deep breath before continuing. "Our village is no kingdom. We have no sweeping landscapes and endless skies to rule over. Therefore, I am no princess, and I am no queen. I'm just Rainshine, the leader." My brow rose over slightly as I looked to the pointed crown on her head and the overall size of her. She was definitely giving off the wrong signals if she didn't want to be called Your Majesty, but I could respect a leader that would forfeit the title of ruler to be closer to their subjects. I respected that wholeheartedly. "That is very honorable and admirable of you, Rainshine. Where I come from, most of our world leaders take their names with gusto, puffing out their chests whilst parading themselves around like they're all that, and then some. I can respect a leader that is strong in their leadership as they are in their duty to their people," I cheerfully replied. "And for a soldier, or a Maharin, I can respect and admire your ability to represent yourself as not only proud, but also humble at the same time. You have my respect in that regard, Adrian," she said with a much brighter smile and a face that was now looking more optimistic by the second. "Yeah, I agree with Rainshine. To be honest, I thought this whole situation was going to spiral way out of control. Boy, I'm sure glad I was wrong. Right, Rainshine?" Autumn chimed in eagerly. "I've never seen the Kirin move that fast to surround some pony like that before. Even when the equestrians came to see us for the first time, you really had us scared there for a moment, but I'm nonetheless glad that you're understanding." Rainshine piped up before Autumn could say anything else, while placing a hoof on her back. "Well, I am glad that the first contact with our new friend here didn't go down a darker path, as I felt it easily could have, given the wrong information," Rain said, relief flooding from her voice as she looked down to Autumn. "I'm glad as well," I spoke, agreeing with her. A smile crept across my face beneath my mask. While things seemed to be getting friendlier between me and those two Kirin, I couldn't help but get the feeling that Rainshine was being just a bit too friendly. I didn't exactly have that much concrete evidence to support that, but I felt like there should have been more resilience to me arriving here to begin with. I felt like this issue was resolved too quickly. Then again, I could have just been overreacting. Well, there's the end of that chapter. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It wasn't very bad. Yeah. Well, it was quite interesting. Although there may have been a few times where I messed up pretty bad or just had to go back again. But then again, I'm staying up pretty late doing this. I do enjoy it though, so for anyone that, or for the people that watch this, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy it. Also, anyone that leaves comments, I might get the time to respond to them, and I guess make sure to leave the comments because I like reading them. They're fun to read to see how people respond, and also for anyone that might have some fanfics to read, you can put them in the comments. You can, if you want to, you can link them in the comments, and I might check them out and get some time to read them. But other than that, stay golden. Have a good evening or night.